My name is Jennifer McArdle, and I am a second-year master's student here at Ohio University in the International Development Studies program. And I've also taken some courses within the Sports Administration program, and I'm focusing on gender studies and how gender is manifest in sport and in development. And so this particular presentation took all of my angst and personal struggle from dealing with gender studies and transported it to the realm of sport and development, and particularly looking at how sport can be empowering for everybody, not just women or not just youth, but how sport can transform gender relations positively within a community. And that is a theme that is repeated throughout the sport and development literature, and is really a reason why there's been a big push to include girls within programs. But I question the how behind it. How does including girls ultimately change gender norms? And to explore this question, I tried to unpack several layers of power and of politics, with politics being very broadly defined as basically struggles for power and control, control of resources and control of voice. So that at the intersection of sport and gender and development, there are a lot of political layers involved. So I looked at how sport broadly is political, and a lot of our colleagues this weekend have talked about that, but I wanted to look at how sport can involve power struggles of who can participate and who can't. And are there ideas about a particular hegemonic masculinity that is privileged within sport that therefore makes women in sport or non-hegemonic men in sport unusual or periphery or even unnatural? And also the idea of sport perpetuating heteronormative ideas, and that if someone doesn't adhere to gender normative concepts, and that's challenging within sport, and these individuals aren't inherently welcome within a lot of sporting structures. And so this can be polarizing, and is really just an example of politics and the power that is constantly being negotiated within sport. And then looking at development and how the control of resources, the control of who even defines terms like development and progress, how that is all constantly being negotiated and involves politics because there's power at play there. I also think that gender is political, and the concept of the appropriate body, both for men and for women, or appropriate gender relations. And even within groups of say, women are all different, but a lot of times there's a tendency to categorize men or as women as sort of categories of analysis, that women do something and men do something else without recognizing all the difference and conflicting or conflicts among women and among men. So taking a step down from that, I looked at national and international structures that are political within development, within gender policies, and within sporting structures. Also that there are, and other people this weekend talked to that also, but how that's a very politicized process. How what we call norms or our traditions are power struggles, and that's something that like, for example, our colleagues were talking about the vuvuzela and whether that is tradition or not. And there are different ideas about what it means to be a tradition, and I think traditions are constantly renegotiated and re-agreed upon. But what that negotiation involves is people who have voice and people who don't have voice, and decisions that are made to favor certain people and not favor others, and why those decisions are made. And even looking at a couple steps below that is looking at individual sport and development projects, programs and teams. And anybody who's played on a sports team knows that there are internal politics within a team. There are girls or boys on a team who have more power and who have more voice than others who aren't as privileged to have their opinions heard. Coaches treat people differently. And there's only so many resources to go around. And in a program, in a sport for development program, who decides who gets a scholarship and who doesn't, and why are those decisions made? If there's the opportunity for international travel, who decides what girls or boys get to travel to, say, Norway for the Youth Cup? And what happens to the players who don't get chosen for that? So I just very broadly and briefly wanted to look at all of these different layers of power and of politics that weren't necessarily brought up this weekend, because when we think politics, we tend to think of a more macro level, like politicians and elections and things like that, but I'm arguing that politics is inherent in everything and in every level. And then taking a look at all of that and saying, so what? What are the implications for that? And I think that in trying to do sport and development and make it empowering for all individuals, it's important to see power for what it is and where it is. And even though the discourse around sport and development might say that incorporating girls into sport and development programs can challenge gender norms, I really question that, because there's all of these other power dynamics at play. And then including girls doesn't necessarily challenge societal assumptions or national policies or international policies or even definitions. It doesn't challenge the relationships that go on between boys and girls within a program naturally or inherently or necessarily. So what I was trying to advocate is that if we really want to use sport and development for gender empowerment, and I don't just mean women's empowerment, but I mean to empower everybody to act their gender characteristics in the way that they choose, then I think it's important to ask questions about power and about positionality, and to look to see relationships between different levels of power and how all of these impact people's daily life, and how they can potentially be changed through a sport and development project that might see itself within a larger political and power context. I don't have answers to that, but this research came in light of the fact that I'm going to be looking to go into the field during the summer. And how do I navigate my own positionality and power as somebody from the United States, as somebody who has a master's degree and who has more voice? I mean, let's just face it, I have more voice than a lot of the people who I'll be working with within a global context. And I don't know how all of those power dynamics influence daily interactions, but I think that they do, and I think that they're there. And I think that we need to be cognizant of all of the power that we have, and maybe even open up space for power dynamics that we aren't recognizing yet, but that can have influence on relationships. And so there were just a few questions that I think are important to ask if I'm going to try to work in this field and try to help people. You know, why am I doing that? What is my own politics? What are my reasons for doing something? And what if I find out that the person I'm trying to help has a different opinion than me, or doesn't want the kind of help that I'm trying to give? So I think that all I'm trying to do is look beyond the simple idea that in and of itself, including girls in a program can be empowering. And I think that it can be, but we need to look at the why or the how, and that we need to position these sport for development programs within a larger political context in order to bring about transformative change within a community that's going to be empowering as far as gender relations.